Okay, so picture this. You're looking to put some money into this space industry, which is obviously exploding with potential.
Yeah.
But also, let's be real, a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
So where do you even
Right.
begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one that a lot of people are asking right now. But fortunately, I think we have some pretty good guidance.
Okay.
And the guidance comes from none other than the Motley Fool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in their Article 3, top space stocks to buy in November.
Oh, okay.
And so, this is timely because it's November 9th, 2024.
Perfect.
They picked out 3 companies that they believe are poised for success, even after we've seen a bit of a downturn in the space market.
Yeah, that's interesting because the Motley Fool knows their stuff. So I
Yeah.
was definitely interested in that. And what I found really cool was that all 3 of these companies survived that downturn
Right.
in the space market. So what does that tell us?
Well, it suggests that they're resilient,
Mhm.
that they're adaptable, and that they can navigate kind of choppy waters.
Right.
And emerge even stronger from that. So, these aren't just fly-by-night startups.
Right.
These companies have substance.
Yeah, they've been through some stuff for sure.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the first one. Rocket Lab USA. I have to admit the whole concept of a company making reusable rockets is just so cool.
It's very cool. It's actually revolutionary. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that they can make reusable rockets like their Electron rocket, which drastically reduces the cost of launching,
Right.
and opens up space to way more players.
Yeah, and their first stage actually comes back and lands upright on a platform.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
It is really amazing. Yeah, it's not science fiction anymore. This is really happening.
It is really happening, and 53 successful launches in just 7 years.
Right.
That's impressive.
That's a fantastic track record for sure.
That's a great track record. And they're not stopping there either. So their upcoming Neutron rockets capable of carrying 15 metric tons into orbit, which is like 3 elephants.
Yeah, that's a serious payload. And, it's important to understand what all of this means for you, the investor.
Right.
Rocket Lab is currently trading at 10 times next year's sales, which might seem a little bit steep.
Yeah.
But when you consider their projected growth, I mean, their revenue is expected to go from $245 million in 2023 to $887 million by 2026.
Wow.
That's a CAGR, a compound annual growth rate of 54%.
Wow. That's
phenomenal.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though their valuation might seem a little high at first glance, that rapid growth trajectory could make it a smart long-term play.
Exactly. And, of course, they face competition from some big companies like SpaceX.
Sure.
But the market is expanding so rapidly, there's room for multiple winners.
Yeah.
And especially for companies that, cater to specific needs.
Right. And Rocket Lab specializes in launching smaller payloads. So with Neutron, it's expanding their capabilities while still filling a crucial gap in the market.
Right. Exactly. I mean, not everything needs to go up on a giant Falcon rocket.
Oh, fucking heavy, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the next company.
Okay.
Intuitive Machines.
Yes.
This one's a bit more of a dramatic story.
Okay.
So they build lunar landers for NASA.
Right.
But early on, they faced significant delays.
Right.
And some investors were like, oh, were they ever going to...
Yeah, they started to lose faith.
Yeah. Did they land on their feet?
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
It's a great question, and actually it's a great story because in February, their Nova-C lander successfully touched down on the moon.
Wow.
The first U.S. moon landing since 1972.
That's incredible. What a comeback story.
What a comeback story. Yeah, it was a defining moment, not just for Intuitive Machines, but for, I think, the entire space industry.
Yeah.
It really reignited interest in lunar exploration, and it proved that private companies could play a really crucial role.
Yeah, for sure.
And NASA definitely took notice. They awarded them 2 very lucrative contracts.
Yeah, one for a lunar terrain vehicle, essentially a moon buggy.
A moon buggy.
Yeah. But the second one is for Near Space Network, and this one blew me away, up to $4.8 billion.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
What does that kind of investment say about Intuitive Machines and their place in this space race?
It says that NASA views them as a very, very important long-term partner.
Yeah?
Essential to their ambitions when it comes to the moon.
Right.
This isn't just about, planting a flag on the moon.
Right.
This is about establishing a sustainable presence on the moon, and Intuitive Machines is playing a very key role in making that happen.
And they're not just relying on these NASA contracts. They've also been pretty smart about capitalizing on the demand for lunar deliveries with their ride-sharing program.
Yeah, think of it as a lunar cargo service. They're delivering everything from scientific instruments to, maybe in the future, mining equipment.
Wow.
It's a very clever way to diversify their revenue streams and tap into a market that I think is only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And all this activity translates into some really, really impressive growth projections. So revenue is expected to jump from $80 million in 2023 to $480 million by 2026. That's a CAGR of 82%.
That's phenomenal.
Oh, that's huge.
It is.
And unlike Rocket Lab, they're currently trading at just over next year's sales. So this suggests that they could be undervalued, offering investors potentially even greater returns.
It's possible, yeah.
All right, so our third and final company for this part of the deep dive is AST SpaceMobile.
Okay.
And this one really kind of sparked my imagination. So what if your cell phone worked anywhere on Earth, even in the most remote locations?
I mean, that would be pretty amazing.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So AST SpaceMobile, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do with their network of low Earth orbit satellites.
Yeah, and they're not just talking about 2G or 4G. They're aiming for 5G connectivity across the entire globe.
The whole thing.
So that's a pretty ambitious goal.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
And the scale of their ambition is just so impressive. I mean, they plan to launch a massive constellation of 243 EO satellites.
Well,
so
that's a lot of satellites.
That's a lot of satellites. And just think about the regulatory hurdles that they have to go through.
It's going to be a lot of red tape to get through, for sure.
Absolutely. So getting approval to launch that many satellites is a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But AST SpaceMobile, they have some pretty big names in their corner.
They do.
So AT&T and Verizon have both signed contracts.
Wow.
So that really demonstrates the confidence in their technology and gives them access to a massive customer base.
Those are some seriously heavy hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some serious players in the telecom world. And it really just, kind of speaks volumes about the potential of AST SpaceMobile's technology to just completely transform the industry.
Yeah, I mean, and they're not alone in this race. I mean, Starlink, owned by Elon Musk's SpaceX, has a similar deal with T-Mobile.
Right.
So clearly, these big telecom companies are seeing dollar signs, and they're recognizing the enormous potential of these low Earth orbit satellite networks.
So AST SpaceMobile, they're up against some pretty stiff competition.
They are.
But their technology, it has the potential to be truly groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, they're claiming that they can communicate directly with standard mobile phones, so you don't even need any specialized equipment.
You just use your phone.
You just use your phone.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's the idea. That's what they're working toward.
So imagine being able to just use your smartphone anywhere in the world. You don't need to rely on cell towers.
Yeah.
That could be incredible for, remote communities, disaster relief efforts, global businesses.
Yeah, think about, being in the heart of the Amazon rainforest or, on the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah, and you can just pull out your phone and call someone.
Yeah, and it works.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. But, let's get back down to Earth for a second.
Okay.
It is a long road ahead for AST SpaceMobile.
Yeah.
The projected revenue growth is incredible, from just $6 million in 2024 to $393 million by 2026. But
that's a big jump.
It is a huge jump.
Yeah.
But, those numbers are still really early projections.
Yeah, they are. And their current valuation at 12 times projected 2026 sales reflects that uncertainty. So, investing in AST SpaceMobile, it's definitely a high-risk, high-reward proposition.
Yeah, it's a gamble for sure. But, man, the potential payoff could be huge.
It could be massive.
Okay, so we've got 3 really interesting space stocks here. Each one has a unique approach. A really cool story.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, what stands out to you?
I think what really stands out to me is just how many different opportunities there are in the space industry.
Yeah.
We've got Rocket Lab focusing on, these reliable and increasingly powerful launch capabilities. We've got Intuitive Machines carving out this very interesting niche in lunar transportation and exploration. And then we have AST SpaceMobile that wants to completely revolutionize global connectivity.
Yeah.
So it's a far cry from the days when, space was only the domain of governments.
Yeah, it really is. And for investors, that means more options.
It does.
but it also means more complexity.
It definitely does, yeah.
So how do you even begin to sift through all the hype and, figure out what are the smart decisions to make?
Well, I mean, you have to analyze carefully. You can't just get swept up in, these big growth projections or bold visions. We have to really understand what's driving these companies and what are some of the challenges that they face.
Yeah, absolutely. For example, Rocket Lab's projected CAGR of 54%. That's exciting.
Right.
But they're operating in a very competitive landscape.
They are. I mean, SpaceX with its Falcon rockets and Starlink satellite network, is a big player.
Huge player.
But competition can also be a very good thing. It can drive innovation.
Yeah.
Rocket Lab's focus on those smaller payloads and their commitment to reusability, I think those are really smart moves that give them an edge.
Yeah. I mean, their Electron rocket, it's already a real workhorse for launching those small satellites. And then with Neutron on the horizon, they're ready to go after a bigger part of that growing market for heavier payloads.
Right. They're moving up, to a bigger weight class. They're ready to take on, bigger challenges.
Yeah.
But the key question for investors is
it going to be enough?
Yeah. Is it going to be enough?
Is their technological advantage going to be enough to keep that growth going?
Yeah, especially in the face of some pretty intense competition.
Yeah, that's a great question for investors to ask.
Yeah.
So Intuitive Machines.
Okay.
Their projected CAGR of 82% is even more impressive.
It's remarkable.
Yeah. Their success seems to be tied to that renewed interest in the moon.
Yeah, it's more than just renewed interest.
Yeah.
I mean, NASA's made it very clear that they're aiming for a long-term, sustainable presence on the moon.
Right.
It's a stepping stone to deeper space exploration.
Yeah.
And possibly even, to actually using the resources on the moon.
Wow.
So
that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so Intuitive Machines, with its lunar landers and its transportation capabilities, they become a really critical partner.
Yeah.
In this grand endeavor.
They do. And those NASA contracts,
right,
especially that $4.8 billion one for the Near Space Network, I mean, that really provides them with a level of stability and financial backing that a lot of other space companies just don't have.
Yeah, it's a huge vote of confidence from a major player. But does that also mean that they're relying too much?
That's a good question.
It's
a double-edged sword. I mean, it's great to have that support.
Yeah.
But what happens if NASA's priorities shift or funding gets cut?
Right.
That could have a really significant impact on their bottom line.
Yeah. So it's just a reminder that even in the space industry, diversification is key.
Yeah.
So their ride-sharing program, offering lunar delivery services to, other companies and institutions, that's a really smart move in the right direction.
Absolutely. It reduces their reliance on NASA, and it opens up these new revenue streams. And I think the demand for lunar deliveries is only going to go up as more countries and private companies set their sights on the moon.
It's amazing to see how a company like Intuitive Machines, that was initially focused on such a specific thing, is now adapting and evolving to meet these changing demands of the space industry.
It is. And I think it's a good sign of, a well-managed company.
Right.
A company that can pivot when it needs to.
So AST SpaceMobile.
Yes.
This vision of global connectivity through this network of LEO satellites, it's so ambitious.
It is. It really is.
And it's potentially transformative.
Yeah.
Their projected revenue growth from $6 million in 2024 to $393 million by 2026. That suggests that investors are really buying into that vision.
They are, but you have to look at those numbers and recognize that they are based on a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we need to consider are the technological hurdles that they face.
Sure.
Building this direct-to-mobile satellite network that's supposed to connect seamlessly with billions of phones around the world.
Yeah.
It's a massive task.
It's not just about, shooting those satellites up into space.
No.
It's about ensuring reliable coverage. It's about managing bandwidth. It's about overcoming atmospheric interference.
Right, all of those things. And let's not forget the competition.
Right.
I mean, Starlink is already ahead of them.
Yeah, they're launching satellites all the time.
All the time. And they have the backing of SpaceX's launch capabilities.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage.
It is. So it's interesting to compare their two approaches.
Yeah. How so?
Well, Starlink relies on these ground-based user terminals.
Right.
Right? You have to have that dish, whereas AST SpaceMobile wants to connect directly to your phone.
Just to a regular smartphone.
Just your regular smartphone.
Got a huge differentiator.
It is. And if they can make it work, it's going to give them a big advantage.
Yeah, in terms of accessibility,
Absolutely.
market reach.
It really could be a game changer.
Okay, so imagine you can use your smartphone anywhere in the world
Yeah.
without needing a cell tower.
Yeah.
That could change everything.
It could revolutionize so many industries.
Yeah, I mean, remote communities,
Right.
disaster relief efforts,
Yeah.
businesses that operate globally.
Uh-huh.
The potential impact is just enormous.
It is.
It is.
But
AST SpaceMobile success depends on overcoming some pretty significant technological challenges
yeah.
and regulatory challenges.
Yeah. And, their partnerships with AT&T and Verizon,
Right.
those are good signs.
Right.
It shows they have faith in the technology.
Yeah.
It gives them access to these huge customer bases.
Yeah. But even with all that, investors need to remember that AST SpaceMobile is still pretty early
Mm-hmm.
in their development.
Yeah,
Their current valuation, it reflects that high risk
it does.
that's associated with these really ambitious plans.
It's a big gamble, but the payoff could be huge.
So we've got Rocket Lab building on their success with these smaller payloads.
Uh-huh.
We've got Intuitive Machines riding the wave of this renewed interest in the moon.
Yes.
And then we have AST SpaceMobile going all in on the future of global connectivity.
Right. And I think each of these companies offers a unique perspective
Yeah.
on the space industry, which is constantly evolving.
Yeah, and each of these companies presents a different risk-reward profile
Absolutely.
for investors. So it's not just about, which company has the highest growth projections. It's
Yeah.
about understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, and their long-term potential.
Exactly.
So as we move into the second part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm really curious to explore another really important dimension of these companies, and that is their commitment to sustainability.
Okay.
It's really easy to get caught up in the excitement of space exploration,
Right.
the potential financial gains.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the environmental impact.
No, we can't.
Right.
It's a very important part of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
The space industry, it's going to present environmental challenges just by its very nature. Launching rockets consumes a lot of fuel. It releases emissions into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And with more and more satellites going up there,
Yeah.
the problem of space debris,
Yeah.
it's only getting worse.
Right. And that can disrupt the orbital environment.
Absolutely.
So how do we figure out,
Yeah.
how committed are these companies to this idea of responsible space exploration?
Right.
What are some of the things we should be looking at?
Well, one thing to consider is, what are they doing to mitigate the environmental impact of the launches?
Oh.
Rocket Lab, for example, they've taken steps to reduce their carbon footprint
Okay. How? So.
by using electric pumps in their vehicles.
Oh, it's
So
not.
that helps reduce their reliance on, more polluting fuels.
Right.
And, of course, their focus on reusable rockets. That's huge
Yeah.
when it comes to sustainability.
That makes a lot of sense.
The fact that they can recover and reuse the first stage of that Electron rocket,
Uh-huh.
it really reduces the resources needed for every launch.
Yeah.
So it's a win for their bottom line, and it's a win for the environment.
It's a win-win.
It is.
So Intuitive Machines.
Yes.
Now their focus is lunar exploration.
Right.
So what are some of the implications there when it comes to sustainability?
Well, I think their work could actually help us better understand the moon's resources.
Okay.
And, potentially pave the way for more sustainable practices in space.
So if we can learn how to use lunar resources,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't need to rely as much on Earth-based materials.
Exactly. And that could really lessen the impact of space exploration on our planet.
So their lunar activities could have a positive impact on the sustainability of the entire space industry.
It's definitely possible.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now what about AST SpaceMobile?
Okay.
They want to build this massive network of ALEO satellites.
Yeah.
How does that fit into?
That's a complicated one.
Yeah?
Because on the one hand, their satellites could be really useful
That'd
for
be
monitoring the environment.
Okay.
Imagine, all the data they could gather on climate change,
Right.
deforestation, all these other critical issues.
So it's like having this global network of eyes in the sky
Exactly.
constantly watching
Yeah. Keeping an eye on things
and collect data.
and gathering data that could be invaluable
Yeah.
in our efforts to protect the planet.
That's a huge potential benefit.
It is. But at the same time, the
Yeah.
sheer number of satellites that they're planning to launch.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It raises those concerns about space debris
Right.
and, the long-term effects on the orbital environment.
Yeah.
So it's this very delicate balancing act
Right.
between, technological advancement
Yeah.
and being a good steward of the environment.
it's not a simple issue.
It's not.
There's no easy answer.
Right.
There are pros and cons to consider.
Absolutely. And I think that means that transparency and ongoing dialogue are really, really important as the space industry tries to grapple with all of these challenges.
Well said. So we've talked about the financial prospects of these companies and the broader implications for the environment.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this part of the deep dive?
I think the key takeaway is that investing in the space industry is not just about making money.
Right.
It's about investing in the future. And that future needs to be one where technological innovation and environmental stewardship go hand in hand.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's a future worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this first part of our deep dive into the world of space stocks.
My pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new, and maybe we've even reignited that sense of wonder about what's possible when it comes to space exploration.
It's a very exciting time to be following the space industry.
It is.
It's not just about making money. It's about investing in the future. And that future needs to be one where technological innovation and environmental stewardship go hand in hand.
Well said. It's a future worth fighting for. Thanks for joining us for this first part of our deep dive into the world of space stocks. We hope you've learned something new, and maybe we've even reignited that sense of wonder about what's possible when it comes to space exploration.
It's a very exciting time to be following the space industry.
It is. Okay, so let's keep this rocket ship rolling.
Okay.
And move on to the second part of our deep dive.
Hey, let's do it.
Where we'll be, digging a little deeper into these three companies.
Okay.
Rocket Lab Intuitive Machines and AST SpaceMobile.
Sounds good.
So, as we were talking about before, each of these companies, they offer a really interesting perspective on the evolving space industry.
They do. And for investors, that means that you have to be really careful about how you analyze these companies.
Right.
You can't just get caught up in the hype.
Right.
You have to really understand what's driving these companies, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses.
Yeah, what are the challenges that they're facing?
Absolutely.
And for example, we were talking about Rocket Lab's projected CAGR of 54%.
Yeah.
That's exciting, but they're operating in a super competitive landscape.
Yeah, you've got SpaceX with its Falcon rockets and Starlink.
Right.
I mean, they're a huge player in the industry.
Yeah, but like you said before, competition can also be a good thing.
It can because it drives innovation.
Right.
And I think Rocket Lab is doing some really smart things.
Like what?
Well, their focus on those smaller payloads.
Right.
And their commitment to reusable rockets. I think those are really smart moves.
Yeah, I mean, their Electron rocket is already a real workhorse in the industry for launching these smaller satellites. And then with Neutron coming up,
right,
they're going to be able to go after those heavier payloads.
Exactly. They're moving up a weight class.
Yeah.
But, for investors, the key question is...
Yeah, is it going to be enough?
Is it going to be enough?
To maintain that growth in the face of that competition.
Especially with SpaceX breathing down their neck.
Right. That's a really great question.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch gears to Intuitive Machines.
Okay.
Their projected KGR is even more impressive, 82%.
It's remarkable.
And a lot of their success seems to be tied to this, renewed interest in the moon.
I think it's more than just renewed interest.
Go on.
I think NASA has made it very clear that they are serious about establishing a long-term sustainable presence on the moon.
So this is like a stepping stone to deeper space exploration.
Yeah, and possibly even, utilizing the resources that are on the moon.
Wow, so Intuitive Machines with their lunar landers and all of their, transportation capabilities, they become a really crucial partner.
They do.
In this much bigger endeavor.
They do, and those NASA contracts especially, that $4.8 billion one. For the new space network, I mean, that gives them a level of stability and financial backing that a lot of other companies don't have.
Yeah, that's a huge vote of confidence.
It is.
But it also raises the question of, are they too reliant on NASA?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Because if NASA's priorities change or if their funding gets cut,
then what?
That could have a big impact on Intuitive Machines.
Yeah. So it's just a reminder that even in the space industry, diversification is so important.
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. And that ride-sharing program that they have, offering lunar deliveries to other companies and research institutions, I think that's a really smart move.
It is, because it reduces their reliance on NASA and it opens up these new revenue streams. And I think that lunar delivery market is only going to grow.
As more countries and private companies decide, hey, we want to go to the moon too.
Exactly.
It's amazing to see how a company like Intuitive Machines that started out so focused on one specific thing
right.
is now adapting and changing to meet these new demands.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
Yeah, it shows they're flexible.
It does.
Okay, so let's talk about AST SpaceMobile.
Okay.
This idea of global connectivity through this network of LEO satellites.
It's incredibly ambitious.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Their projected revenue growth from $6 million to $393 million.
In just a couple of years?
That suggests that investors are buying into this vision.
Yeah, but there are a lot of assumptions built into those numbers.
Yeah, and what about technological challenges?
I mean, building a direct-to-mobile satellite network that's supposed to connect seamlessly with billions of phones around the world. I mean, that is a monumental task.
Yeah, it's not just about launching satellites. It's about ensuring reliable coverage, managing bandwidth, overcoming all of the interference.
And let's not forget about the competition.
Right. Starlink is already way ahead of them.
They are, and they have the backing of SpaceX.
Right.
So it's interesting to compare their two approaches.
Yeah. How so?
Well, Starlink relies on those ground-based user terminals.
Right. You have to have that dish.
You need the dish. Whereas AST SpaceMobile wants to just use your phone.
Your regular smartphone.
Yeah. No special equipment needed.
That's a huge advantage.
It is. And if they can make it work, I think it'll give them a major leg up.
Yeah. In terms of accessibility and market reach.
Absolutely.
So imagine you can use your smartphone anywhere in the world.
It would change everything.
It would be a game changer.
It would.
I mean, for remote communities,
Disaster relief.
businesses that operate globally,
So many possibilities.
the potential impact is huge.
It is.
But AST SpaceMobile's success really hinges on overcoming some very significant technological and regulatory challenges.
Yeah, those are big hurdles to clear.
Yeah, and their partnerships with AT&T and Verizon, those are good signs.
They are.
It shows that those big companies have faith in the technology.
And they're giving AST SpaceMobile access to these massive customer bases.
But investors need to remember, AST SpaceMobile is still early in their development.
They are.
So their current valuation reflects that high risk that comes with these really ambitious plans.
Right? It's a big gamble, but the potential reward is massive.
Okay, so we've got Rocket Lab building on their success with smaller payloads, intuitive machines. They're riding this wave of renewed interest in the moon.
Right.
And then AST SpaceMobile. They're betting big on the future of global connectivity.
Yeah. And each company gives us a unique perspective on this rapidly changing space industry.
And for investors, it's not just about picking the company with the highest growth projections.
Yeah.
It's about really understanding, what are their strengths?
Yeah.
What are their vulnerabilities? And what's their long-term potential?
Exactly.
So as we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to talk about something that we touched on earlier.
Okay.
And that's the whole idea of sustainability. So, we were talking about sustainability before.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of space exploration and, the money.
Yeah.
But we have to think about the environmental impact.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be part of the conversation.
So how do we assess, how committed these companies are to this idea of responsible space exploration?
Well, I think, one of the things you can look at is what are they doing to lessen the environmental impact of their launches?
Okay.
Rocket Lab, for instance, has been trying to reduce their carbon footprint by using electric pumps in their vehicles.
Okay.
And of course, their emphasis on reusable rockets is a big step in the right direction.
Right, because they can recover and reuse that first stage.
Exactly.
Less waste.
Less waste, fewer resources needed for every launch.
So it's good for the planet and good for their bottom line.
It is a win-win.
So Intuitive Machines,
Okay.
now their focus is lunar exploration.
Right.
So how does that play into this whole idea of sustainability?
Well, I think their work could actually help us understand the moon's resources better.
Okay.
And potentially, lead to more sustainable practices in space.
So if we can use the resources that are already on the moon,
Right.
then we don't have to bring everything with us from Earth.
Exactly. And that could really lessen our footprint.
Yeah, so their lunar activities could have a positive ripple effect
Yeah.
on the entire industry.
It's possible.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, what about AST SpaceMobile?
Okay.
They want to put this huge network
Yeah.
of satellites up there.
A lot of satellites.
So where do they fit in?
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, their satellites could help us monitor the environment.
Okay.
They could be gathering data on climate change,
Right.
deforestation, all these other issues.
So it's like having all these eyes in the sky,
Right, keeping water.
constantly collecting information.
Yeah, and that data could be super valuable in
Right.
helping us protect the planet.
Yeah, but then there's the whole issue of space debris,
But there's a lot of satellites going up there.
and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and that can have some serious consequences.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, isn't it,
It is.
between technological advancement and, just trying to take care of the environment.
Right. We have to find a way to do both.
It seems like transparency and ongoing dialogue are super important
I think so.
as this industry evolves.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to keep talking about these things.
So we've covered a lot today.
We have.
We've looked at the financial prospects of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the implications for the environment.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing to remember is that investing in the space industry isn't just about, trying to make a quick buck.
Right.
It's about investing in the future.
In that future.
And that future needs to be one where technology and environmental responsibility work together.
Well said. It's a future worth fighting for.
Yeah, it is.
So that wraps up our deep dive into space stocks.
Mm-hmm.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
And we hope that maybe we've inspired you
Yeah.
to learn a little bit more.
Keep looking up.
Keep looking up. Absolutely. And until next time,
Happy investing.
thanks for listening.